Hi. Welcome to our final video of Black Girl Magic Book Chat Halloween Edition. I'm Larissa, the African American Resource Center Coordinator, and all month I have been reading suspense and horror and sci-fi books by Black authors. I have had an excellent time reading these books. They have been just incredible. So, I read my final book this past week, and it was a page turner. I literally read it in a day. Literally. So, I read The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. It is a YA novel, young adult. It is a rewrite of Stephen King's Carrie. So when I was younger, I went through a Stephen King phase. And I read Carrie, and I watched the first movie, and I've seen the remake movie as well. If you've never seen or read Carrie, the original is about a young girl who lives with, or a teenage girl, who lives with an overbearingly religious mother and is bullied by her classmates, and she's invited to prom as a joke, and she's humiliated at this prom, and she sort of erupts and pretty much kills everybody with these powers that she has manifested over the course of this book. So The Weight of Blood is very similar in that premise. It's about a girl with an overbearingly religious father instead of a mother. She's been bullied the entire book by classmates and by dad. And over the course of the book, she's manifesting these powers, and they sort of just erupt after she's humiliated at the prom. So that part stays the same. What's different makes this book a little bit hard to swallow. So our main character is Maddie. Maddie is a biracial girl who lives with her, like I said, father, who's hyper-religious. He is a white man. And so he has asked Maddie, and by asked, I mean forced Maddie to pretend to be fully white, to denounce every part of her black heritage. So she goes through life with straightened hair. She's got really light skin, so she passes. So everybody in her class thinks that she's a white girl. One day, it rains. And so that's one of the things. So the book kind of starts with her explaining that every day she checks the weather forecast to make sure that it doesn't rain, because if it rains, her hair is gonna poof up, as people who straighten their hair but has natural hair knows. So one day, rain's not in the forecast, it rains, and her hair blooms, if you will. Maddie, she's never been allowed to do anything. She's under the thumb of her father. She can never go anywhere. She's always been a target. Finding out that she's black makes it worse. So this book is set in a small town in Georgia where it's still pretty segregated. White people live on one side of town, non-white people live on another. But the school is integrated. But for the most, the school is integrated. But for the most part, everybody lives their separate lives. They even have separate proms, which is kind of a big deal in this book. The white prom and the black prom, right? So, Maddie's hair blossoms. She has to go to class, and everybody's like, oh my God, is she? Is she? And kids being kids, and by kids being kids, I mean kids being horrible kids, throw pencils at her hair. Listen, if you throw a pencil in my hair, it's probably going to get stuck. That is what happens to Maddie, and they're laughing about it. They're recording it. Someone uploads this video, and it goes viral. So this viral video of people literally throwing pencils in a black girl's hair obviously gets traction. So a spotlight is put on this town, and it's racism sort of comes to the light. So this incident is kind of this catalyst for when this happens, everybody's world is disrupted. The white folks, the black folks, Maddie, everybody's world is disrupted. So I had a hard time, maybe not a hard time, because like I said, I read this book in a day. So I didn't have a hard time reading it, but I was definitely stuck in my feelings as I read it. So the school that Maddie, like I said, goes to is integrated, but it's the kind where there's only a handful of non-white students, and those non-white students pretty much stick together. The only way they don't is if, in a very cliche sort of way, you've got the one girl who's probably a cheerleader or the one guy who's a football player. And that's true in this book. Kenny, who's another really important character, is a black guy. He's a football player. He's a star. All of his friends are white. And so he's kind of welcomed in. One, because he's the reason they're winning football games, and that trumps race any day. But he's also kind of like, not even just that, he's able to ignore his reality, right? He's got these friends. He considers them good people as long as they don't talk about anything that's real. They don't talk about race. They don't talk about their differences. And even in this, at the start of this book, Kenny doesn't want to talk about it. He's in this book, he's a character who wants to just keep it quiet. That's not even important. His sister is more of a, I don't want to say militant because that's not true, but she's more outspoken about the realities of their race. And he had even said to her, why do you have to be so loud about it? She had on a shirt. It's not Black Lives Matter. It was Black Lives, Black Pride or something. But some parallel to Black Lives Matter. She had on a shirt and he was like, everybody knows you're black. Why do you have to announce it? So that's kind of where his mind is. But once this incident happens, we see Kenny start to grapple with the fact that his skin is dark. And in this world, that does mean something, and usually something negative. And he has to grapple with the fact that his friends hold these biases about people who look like him. And he gets to be excused because he's quiet. I don't know if they said it, but there's this sort of subtle, we like you because you're not about all that black pride stuff, right? You don't harp on it, so you're okay. And when he sees the way that his friends are treating Maddie, the way they talk about other people who look like him, he starts to realize hey, this is actually who they are, and them liking me doesn't really mean much. This book brings to the forefront the biases that live in people. We all have our biases, but in this town, these biases affect the way that they speak to other people, that they think of other people, that they interact with other people. In this book, a lot of the white people cause harm, but they get the sympathetic look when a black person says, hey, you harmed me, cut it out. And they're like, oh, it was a joke. You can take a joke, right? When no, it wasn't a joke. It was real, and it has real consequences. Some of it's blatant. There's a blackface incident. And in this incident, that actually becomes a thing where the person who does it is I was just joking. I was joking. And is really mad that people are mad at her. So some of it's blatant, and some of it's subtle, literally in the way that everybody is okay. And I guess that's probably not even subtle, but everybody's okay with them having separate proms. And when the idea of having an integrated prom comes to the forefront, even some of Kenny's friends are no, we want to keep it separate. And Kenny has to really okay, so you don't want to party with me? You're my brother, So it's definitely one of those books that I did not experience much of this growing up. My school was predominantly black. So sort of the way that this happens, I never experienced, especially not in school. But I've seen it. I've like heard it in the way that people I've worked with before has spoken about people around them who don't look like them. Those like really like these throwaway comments that they don't think mean much, but in reality are rooted in hatred. Another really fun thing about this book, I guess the only fun thing about this book, is that interspersed throughout this book is a sort of podcast-esque sort of feature. So everybody knows the story of Carrie. So like that part is not, you don't need to know what happened because everybody knows what happened. So this book at the beginning, if you've ever watched if you've ever listened to a podcast, like I'm a true crime podcast enthusiast. That's pretty much all I listen to in my car. That and R&B. So podcasts like this, when they're trying to figure out what happened, they'll go back. They will interview people who were involved if they're still alive. They'll kind of bring about their own conjectures, like what do they think happened. So in this book, interspersed throughout the chapters, is as if we're learning what happens as the podcast hosts do. So that's actually really cool because everybody I know listens to podcasts. Like, we love them. So that kind of brings it into 2022, if you will. But another thing that really, I always say thought-provoking. They're great. But another thing that I thought about was, so we know that at the end of this book, a lot of people are going to die. And it's going to be Maddie who does it. Maddie goes into this kind of flake state, so she doesn't even know what's going on, but people die. And at the end of the book, one of the podcast hosts sort of implied that, like, what she did, while not fine, was fine. And so I read a review of this book where another reader said that they didn't like the message that it gave, that just because people treated you a certain way does not give you the right to go and kill them all, even people who like you didn't know. That's true. Okay, I just want to name that I am not advocating for revenge killing. However, in this book, you almost kind of get it, because what happens is Maddie, from the moment she starts school in like 6th grade or something, she's bullied. They call her Mad Maddie. Come on, y'all. So she's bullied literally from the moment she steps into school. And she goes home and she has a prayer closet that her dad will make her do. And he will like purposefully burn her with a hot comb. My mama never purposely burned me with a hot comb, but I've been burned with a hot comb and it hurts. And not only that, so she's been bullied her entire life by everybody she knows. And not only that, the people who were not actively engaged in this bullying just watch. They let it happen. They didn't say anything. And I have a huge disdain for bullies. There's no reason to speak ill of another person who's sitting around doing nothing to you. Like, I hate it. So, no, I do not advocate for the way that this, she's out here killing folks. But at the end of the book, you can you're like low-key still rooting for. Because I cannot imagine the weight that something like that would have. Because it's almost like the moment Maddie decides, I am just going to be me, I'm going to be free. I have friends now, and by friends, she like one. She's got a friend now. She goes to prom with a cute guy who actually likes her. And the moment she steps into herself, she knows she's able to say, hey, I'm a biracial person. I've got these powers. Well, she doesn't say I've got these powers, but she's got these powers. The moment she does that, it falls. And so I think it's kind of that straw that broke the camel's back sort of situation with her. There's so much I can say about this book, but I'm already at 15 minutes and I don't want to keep talking because I could. This book was incredible. If I had to choose 2 books for you to read from all the books that I read this month, it would definitely be The Weight of Blood. And it's actually it's a pretty easy read. Like, The Weight of Blood and then The Cutting Season by Ada Kalak. I thought that was incredible too. So those are the ones that I would recommend you try first. Thank you all so much for rocking with me this Halloween season as I really, as I went through and read these books that we do not get a lot of recognition in. And we should, because they're incredible and it was a joy. So I will be back in March for more books in various genres by Black female authors for Women's History Month. Thank you all for this. See you in March.